Welcome in again, everybody, to Coach's Corner on the Auburn Undercover Podcast. I'm your co-host, Ronnie Sanders, joined today by Ellis Johnson. Ellis, good to be with you again.
Good to be back. We keep coming back, hoping good news after that little back rub last weekend. This one, Ronnie, I don't know about you, but I had the problem with the YouTube TV and
I did too.
Disney. So I couldn't get I could get an ESPN game, but one at a time. And I got Texas and Vandy, and then later on I got somebody else. I didn't see the Auburn game. I couldn't even get it because of that problem. And if I had one of my kids over here, they could have switched me over to a different streaming. But when they called me on the phone, tell me how to do it, I said, that's don't waste time. I'll never get that done. But on a serious note, it just ticked me off so bad. I mean, the way they destroy your whole weekend, you know. And I guess a lot of folks don't watch sports, so they don't care. But anyhow, I didn't see a lot of football this past weekend. And when I picked up this thing, I know I got a text from you. When I looked at the stats after the game, it was just crazy. Now, Kentucky's a pretty good defensive football team, but I mean, they just completely just shut them off, and it, almost like dysfunctional.
Well, it reminded me, I think if Freeze had finished 7-5, he's still the coach. I don't think there's any question.
Yeah.
But to me, when we got fired at Florida in 2004, and y'all beat us at Mississippi State, and I was in Loxley's office, Mike Loxley, who's now at Maryland, for those who don't know, but I was in Mike Loxley's office. He was a running backs coach at Florida, and this is after we lost to y'all at Mississippi State. It was a Sunday after, and he said, I was in there, we had the door closed. He said, you think we can make it? And I said, well, hell no. And I said, and the next morning, Zook came in the staff meeting. He said, well, boys, and he was late. His car was there. We knew what was going. His car was missing. He always parked underneath the stadium. So we knew what was going on. And he walked in and sat down. He said, well, boys, they're pulling the plug. And it reminded me a lot of the Kentucky game that, which we ended up being Hugh Freeze's last game. It reminded me a lot of that.
Yeah.
But, our kids, in some ways it did, in some ways it didn't. I mean, it felt kind of like a Waterloo. Okay, so, this isn't getting any better, so we're going to pull the plug. Our kids were a little bit, it's a little bit different in that when we were at Florida, and Auburn has a lot of young kids too, but we had a bunch of young kids and they hadn't quit, but they were just a bunch of freshmen. Hell, they hit a wall, and that was a year that our off week, the athletic director ended up, we had the hurricane come through. And so we opened with a Middle Tennessee or somewhere, I don't remember who it was now, but they moved our opening game to our off date. So we're playing with all these freshmen and we don't have a break at all. And so, and you schemed us up pretty good too. So,
well, it wasn't on purpose. We were having a hard time also, but we had already gotten beat. I think that game was about the middle of the year, wasn't it?
Yep.
But we'd already gotten blasted by Ronnie and Cadillac early in the year. They ran for about 300 each. I'm surprised they could finish the season. But and then we even lost that year to Maine.
I remember that. Yeah.
It was in tough shape when we came in. But what happened after about 3 or 4 games, it was actually going into an open week or either y'all, but before y'all's game, we literally switched defenses almost. We cut it down. We moved guys like Culberson from safety to outside linebacker. We had kids in places where we didn't have good team speed. So we changed all that, but as a result, we had to be real simple. And then somehow we got a pick on a pass. Y'all tried to throw a hitch or flat route over to the left early in the game, and Culberson picked the thing off, and I think he might have run it in. But it was just one of those things. It was just crazy. And y'all had lost a game or two before then, I think.
We lost it very, very similar to what happened to Freeze. And I don't want to. There are some parallels, They're not all. They're not. It's not a match to match. But we lost early in the year to Tennessee on a couple of bad calls. The refs, if I remember right, the whole crew got suspended. Tennessee got kicked a 50-something yard field goal. If I remember, a 52-yard field goal, something like that, to beat us as time expired in Knoxville. We had them beat. Receiver gets into a damn, argument with a DB, and of course he's the one that ends up getting a personal foul because he punched back, and so it ends up getting them in field goal range, and that was the game. And there were a ton of bad calls during the game. And so I've got some sympathy. At the same point in time, it had gotten to the point where, like I said, if he'd gotten to 7-5, that's one thing, but it had gotten to the point where he had completely lost the fan base, and I'm just not sure that he could have ever recovered after the Kentucky.
Well, you get some other factors involved in it. And Kentucky's not they're not. They got good players. They're not a real good football team this year. They had not won a conference game, I don't think. And so to dominate or completely, I won't say it was dominant because their offense wasn't worth a crap either. To play so poorly and not even be able to put up some points at a few critical times, it just, it's just been too many times, I guess. And so nobody could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think he started the Daniels kid.
Yeah.
Didn't do too bad.
Well, it looked the same. It looked, and I think the key difference, we talked about the parallel between what happened to us at Florida and what happened to Freeze, but I think the key difference, Freeze is calling the plays. Freeze is calling the plays, and you've been there 3 years, and the offense has been bad all 3 years. You got better players this year than you've had since you've been there, and the offense is worse than it's been. And
that's puzzling to me, Ronnie. I do think in today's world with the portal and NIL, I think the OC, DC, head coach, CEO, I think that structure works better. But there have been guys that have called their own plays and been very successful. I worked for Spurrier. I don't know if he could do it in today's culture, but he was excellent. And there have been some others that have been really good. But when Hugh took it back over, I thought it was the right move because I'd coached against him, and they offensively were always explosive, multiple, and dangerous at Ole Miss. He may have inherited better players there and kept recruiting some good ones, but he was beginning to build that up in Auburn. And I thought the thing was going to flip. I thought it was going to turn the corner this year. I really did. And then when you've got a defense playing almost maybe one game or two this year, they've not played up to a level where they should have won the ball game. But it's almost sad to waste that defense the way they played this year. So
I don't think Auburn's allowed.
I just couldn't figure it out. I'm still puzzled by it. And I think from what you told me, he said early in the season when he said this guy's going to be responsible for this guy's going to be responsible for that, this guy's going to be responsible for that. I hope he meant in studying and planning and putting in some stuff into the plan, because if he's getting input during the course of the game on who's the passing game coordinator, run game coordinator, this guy's going to be in charge of third down, this guy's going to be in charge of goal line, or whatever it was you told me you had it compartmentalized, that's got to be gone on game day. You got to have one guy making the decisions. If it's a bad decision, you can change it. But when you've got multiple people in it, you don't have a decision. You got a committee meeting, and that's not going to work.
And if you're going to call plays, you got to be in the meetings during the week. And I think that was, at least from what I understand, he was calling the plays, but I'm not sure that with everything else going on, like you said, there's a lot going on nowadays. So can you be in meetings? Can you handle NIL? Can you handle this? Can you handle media? Can you, on and on and on. And do you have time to be in the meetings? And if you're not in the meetings every day and you're trying to call plays on Saturday, not sure how that works.
No, not at all. I'll give another example. When Venables decided to do the same thing, but on the other side of the ball this season, I thought, boy, that's going to be tough. But in that situation, I thought it was a good decision because he was going to get the better results. He's that good. But He went out and hired, I can't get the guy's name right now, but he used to run the Senior Bowl, and then it got him from Washington or Oregon. Where did he bring him from? The guy that's his general manager.
I thought it was Oregon, maybe not.
And it could have been a professional team. I don't know. But, I mean, he brings in a guy, and you could tell the whole structure was, I'm going to be coaching defense, and he's going to be running personnel and managing about 70% of what a head coach has to do, and took all that off of him. And I still don't know how he does it during the course of a game when he's trying to get something adjusted over on the bench, and you've got the football out on the field. You got to be really in sync with your offense coordinator, because you're going to have some quick decisions come up all of a sudden, and you're not going to be even watching at the time. You're going to be making a correction over on the bench. So that one has worked better, but I think there've been a couple of times where he's had to sort of, it's just like a logjam almost. You can't do everything you got to do during the course of the game as a head coach because you're coaching the defense. And so whatever. But it was a terrible game, and I just think even if they'd have won a close game, you're probably right. I don't think this would have happened, but who knows?
Jim Nagy is the GM at Oklahoma. Yeah, he was the Senior Bowl.
And his background, he's got a lot of experience in that kind of stuff, personnel, and he knew NFL pay scales and stuff, where you have to structure that money you got and make sure, just because you got more NIL money than the next guy, you still better use it wisely, or you end up, like Florida State last year, or somebody, there's a lot of examples where they didn't make good choices, bad evaluations.
Yeah, and the other thing one of the things I wanted to hit today with you, you've got 4 jobs right now that are considered premier jobs. Maybe Arkansas would be considered one, but I don't consider it one. So you got LSU, Florida, Penn State, Auburn. Now, I don't think Auburn's hiring anybody to be interested in Penn State, or vice versa, probably. I'm not sure that those two things. So if you're Auburn, you're competing against LSU in Florida. Now, strangely enough, there's actually alignment at Auburn that there hasn't been since Dye was there, probably. You've got a president, an AD, and a board that are all on the same page, as hard as that is to believe at Auburn. You've got at LSU no president, no AD, and a governor who comes across as unhinged. At Florida, you've got no president. You got an AD who just got an extension, but in all likelihood, he's not going to be there when a new president's hired. So in 2 years, if you're at LSU, you may have a president. I mean, I think they're going to hire a president pretty soon, but you may have a president that was involved in hiring you, but for sure you're not going to have an AD that hires you. And if you're at Florida, in 2 years, you're probably not going to have either one there. If you're at Auburn, chances are you are going to have both. And the other thing, you've got to live in Baton Rouge. And I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that, if you're sitting there and you've got small children, and I don't think this is a small thing, you talk to coaches.
No, I totally agree with you.
And so if you're talking about stability and you're talking about place to live, and you and I had this conversation, for those that don't know, and I guess it's been long enough now, you and I were you had a chance to go to Florida State after the 2012 season, had a chance to go to Auburn. Then you and I were sitting there talking, and you said, where would you go? And I said, well, you're going to have easier chance winning a national championship at Florida State just based on who you play. But from a place to live standpoint, your family's going to love living in Auburn. I'm not sure they're going to love living in Tallahassee. And you went to Auburn. I just think if you've got small children, that's something you consider. And I've lived in Auburn and Gainesville and Baton Rouge, and Baton Rouge would be dead ass last. But I'm not saying that to beat anybody up. I think LSU's a great job. It's got wonderful traditions and all those things. But it's not a place where I think I would want to go raise my kid.
Well, I had all sorts of reasons, and I don't mean to get off on a tangent, but just to get the point across to people make decisions on these jobs based on a lot of things other than facilities and what conference are you in and all that. When I had that situation, Florida State had a microwave national championship team sitting there, ready to roll. And, we talked about it a little bit, but I'd seen Auburn's personnel and played against them when I was at Carolina a couple of times. And they had good players too, but it was more in a build back mode. And, Gus thought it was going to take a couple, 3 years. I mean, crazy that we ended up playing them in the national championship game, but it was almost a fairy tale season to get there. But what I had to do is I can't remember the exact number of years I had in the state retirement system at Auburn and Alabama, excuse me. And that's why I chose to go to Auburn as much as anything else, is I was able to solidify that state pension. So I had one already in South Carolina, and I wanted to get that Auburn done. And then I really was looking forward to getting back in the SEC, and I was always impressed with the system that Gus ran, because I had to defend it twice, 2 different years, 3 times in 2 years. So I had a lot of respect for that. So there are all sorts of things that go into it. And I think when Jimbo offered me the job, and I told him I wasn't coming, he thought I was crazy as hell, and I might have been.
Well, I think he got pissed off. I know he got pissed off at me when you didn't take it, because I was the go-between, and I think he knows I went to Auburn. I think he thought I talked you into going to Auburn. I said, and I just laid out the facts for him. I mean, I told him the same thing I told you, and he didn't disagree.
But there are a lot of things, that go into coaches' decisions, and your thing about children is very important. I've never worked in an environment, an urban environment, in my 44 years of career. And some of it was chance, but the majority of it, I made personal decisions about it. And hell, I didn't, until my last 15 years in coaching, I didn't have kids. And I still didn't want to live in those environments. That just isn't me.
Yeah, I mean, and again, look, LSU's a great place. I don't want to sound like I'm beating it up or anything, but the culture down there is different than it is. If you grew up in the Deep South, and I'm not saying Louisiana's not the Deep South, but if you grew up in the Deep South and you're in Alabama or Georgia or Tennessee, that's different than growing up in South Louisiana.
Well, it's more about size, population to me. It's just a personal thing. And usually with cities come expenses, come school issues, safety issues, other things. It just comes with the territory. It doesn't matter if you're up north, out west, down south. You get in a large urban setting, you've got more people, you've got more crime, you've got more school issues, education issues, you've got all sorts of things to deal with as a human, and coaches are human, and especially their families. Hell, I can't remember who made that comment, but they said, it doesn't matter where you coach, coaches live at the facility.
That's right.
But your family doesn't, and they have to deal with it out there in the real world all the time. So there are a lot of things, you're right, there are a lot of things about the job that doesn't make it attractive. The main thing that would scare me about the job right now, because I had the exact same experience at Southern Miss. They don't have a president, they don't have an AD, they don't have a line. And I knew that going in, and because of the experience I'd had there in the late 80s, with Curly Hallman, we had Brett Favre and some really good football players. We had some NFL football players, because back then everything was different, with admissions rules and conference rules and all that good stuff. I mean, we could play with anybody, and it was 2 of the most fun years I ever had. And the only reason I left is I got to go to a place like Alabama. But it was just not even nearly the same. The environment was totally different. And I think the vast majority of it started because of what you're talking about, the inline situation of chain of command. It wasn't there. And it got worse in the first 3 months I was there. By the time we played our opening game, I'd already had the most miserable 6 months of my life. The hell of the season, we didn't win a game. That's hard on a coach. But that wasn't the worst part of my time down there, because coaches like fixing problems. So we'd come in each week, bearing down, focusing on getting some JUCO players in there, getting some recruiting class, straightening out whatever we were doing poorly on the field. We knew we didn't have good players. Not like they'd had. It was a build back year. That part was somewhat energizing for a coach. But when you're dealing with all that political crap going on in your system and in administration and right on down through the athletic administration, it was absolutely ugly. I mean, not only did we not get support in some areas, we were getting a lot of antagonism behind the back. And so you just couldn't overcome all that. And that's what would worry me about going into LSU right now. You're exactly right. You don't know, what the chain of command is. And everybody in those critical positions within 2 years will not be who hired you coming in the door.
And you got the same situation in Florida, and strangely enough, Auburn is the place that now has alignment and, and continuity. And so it's going to be interesting. I mean, that's one reason Venables didn't end up at Auburn. He was offered the job when Brian Harsin was hired, and they thought they had him talked into taking it. And he just said, you know what, there's no alignment there. And so, they thought they had Billy Napier talked into taking it, and ended up with Harsin when both those guys backed out. So alignment matters,
Yes, it does.
And again, what kind of players do you have? And what are your, and the other question is, I know everybody keeps talking about LSU's this great job, and it is a great job, but you just fired a guy who won 29 games in the previous 3 years and played in an SEC championship game. Now,
I agree.
I'm not sure what the hell your expectations are, but if I'm a coach and you just paid Brian Kelly $50 million not to coach, and I've got a chance to walk into Auburn or Florida, and both those places got really good players too, and neither one of those programs have been worth a damn in, at least 5 years, both of them.
Yeah.
That's a pretty easy. I think my choice is going to be I'm down to Florida and Auburn. I'm not going to LSU in that situation, but that's me.
All of them have their advantages and disadvantages. I always thought one of the toughest things at Auburn was you were stuck between Alabama, Georgia, Florida State, Florida, and LSU. And I mean, Ole Miss and Mississippi State, I worked there too at Mississippi State. And we couldn't control our own state with those people, So that's what makes it a hard job. But a lot of that landscape's changing now because Auburn was always had great teams when they had some Florida kids and some South Georgia kids. But you don't have to do that now. You got to do some of it. Don't get me wrong. But you got the portal now. And if you got enough money and they give you enough money to go get them, and apparently they do, because I think he did a good job with the portal. And the quarterback thing did not work out, but it was a pecking order, and they did get the ones he wanted. But they were able to get somebody because they got some money. So to be honest with you, I think today when you ask the critical questions going into taking one of those jobs, I think you find out if you got alignment. And in that alignment, are they aligned to help the athletic department and not just the psychological outfits over across the campus? Make sure you got somebody that really cares about athletics. I've been in some of those situations before. Some of them masquerade like they came from big time universities. One, we worked for a guy, he'd come from Florida, and he tried to act like he was big time athletics because he had coached. I mean, he'd been an administrator at Florida, and he no more cared about what was happening to man to moon and didn't know how to fix it. So anyhow, that one thing's important. Now, the next thing is maybe not facilities like it used to be one of the top 4 or 5 issues. It needs to be money. I'm talking about player money. Coaches better start worrying more about the money they give them to get players instead of the money they tell them to get staff.
And that's another thing about the Auburn job. Right now, Auburn has had some things. You've got the new Nike deal, which includes some NIL money. You've moved your home game against Baylor to Atlanta for the opener next year. That includes some NIL money. So all of a sudden, Auburn has a really good roster. Now you're going to have to, you're going to have to retain those guys, obviously. But you've got extra NIL dollars over the next 2 years that you didn't have before. And you've got complete alignment. You've got, like I say, you've got plenty of NIL money. One thing that is, you said it really jumped off the page a minute ago. I mean, I remember we're at Florida. We come in or we send over this is our first year, and we send over our dates for camp. Now, keep in mind, we got football practice fields. There wasn't a football-only facility. There wasn't an indoor facility. There is now. There's all those things. You got a new $90 million football facility at Florida. You got indoor facility. You got all the things you need. We didn't have any of that. We had to. It was, lightning was coming at 3:00 in the afternoon, which it was every day. Then we had to go practice in the damn parking deck.
Yep.
But we got we put in we submit our dates for camp for the coming summer, and we get the response back was, no, you can't use those. You can't use the practice fields during those dates. We got soccer camp. And we said, well, wait a minute. Now they're football practice fields, and we're trying to have a damn football camp. And, this is when we need that. No, you can't use those. Soccer's using football fields. They're athletic association practice fields, not football practice fields. And soccer's using them. So you can't. And that's what we ran into. And,
so you have the red flag right there. I'm telling you, man.
And we're sitting I remember sitting in, and I walked in the building now, and I had been at LSU. This is before they built new facilities. And I had been at Auburn. When I got there, I mean, that facility was fairly new. But we get down to LSU, they needed new facilities. But I walk in at Florida, and I start looking around. I'm like, this damn place is won 6 straight. As he said, I mean, what? Really?
And Coach Steve was a lot like that now. I mean, once you start winning, he could have anything he wanted. He didn't really care. We were trying to get him to get us a better indoor facility when we were at Carolina. And it took them, I was gone by the time they built it. But we practiced in a bubble of about 80-yard field. Mm-hmm. And we really couldn't have a normal practice in there. And he just, he didn't see the big need for it. I said, Coach, I've been 2 places that's got really good ones. And it helps in recruiting, and it helps logistically when you got bad weather. It really is a big deal. And but that's partly what it was. Steve was very easy as an athletic director. He was very easy to work with. He was never demanding stuff and complaining and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked when I got down there, and then I remember we had our first recruiting weekend, and AD comes in and he says, this is University of Florida. We got the best facilities in the country, the best this, best that, and the other. And I'm standing over standing next to Zook in the meeting room. Well, we had recruits in there. I looked over at him. I said, "What the hell is he talking about?" He said, "He'd never been anywhere else." I said, "I know." I mean, so all those things are in place at Auburn. And so I think that there are some advantages now that there were not 3 years ago, and certainly not 5 years ago.
Absolutely. I mean, I couldn't rank them as good as you can because I've kind of been out of it for a while. Plus, I never worked at LSU, never worked at Florida, never worked with a couple of these others that are in the mix. But there are a lot of factors in picking a job, and I think a lot of these coaches make mistakes, emphasizing the wrong things.
Yeah, look, I mean, you can win at all of them. And is it probably easier to win a national championship at LSU than it is at Auburn? Yeah. Is it easier to win one at Florida than it is at Auburn? Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's true anymore. I don't.
Maybe you're right.
Because of the conference change. I mean, it used to be Auburn. You had to, it used to be in high school recruiting was a key to your personnel. And when that's the case, first thing most coaches say is, we got to win our home state. And then we've got to be able to recruit within 300 miles of here. That's because kids know us better. A lot of that's gone out the window. I mean, people are recruiting nationally. Some of it's technology. You can sit there in your office and evaluate 300 kids in a week, whereas you used to have to get out and get on the road and get on the sidewalks and get into schools, and you had to go see kids. You had to go look at the film at the high school because you couldn't get it from them. I mean, everything's changed over time. The second thing is transportation. Not only is it more available now, kids have got money now. You're paying them, so they can go somewhere like that and still get there. You can get the parents flown in for the games. You can do all that stuff. That squeezes distance down now, so it's not a big deal about having a geographical recruiting area. There's nothing wrong with it. It's certainly great. I mean, somebody told me LSU one year they didn't go to a home visit further than 200 miles except for 3 kids or something like that. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Well, that's wonderful. Saves you a little bit of money, but you don't have to have that to have a good roster. And now you got the portal. And so you're getting at least a third of your new players in the portal, even more if you want to. And so I think schools like South Carolina, it's going to be a balancing, an equalizer to where they can compete with people on any given weekend because they're going to be able to go in the portal and get them about 12 kids that are better than these high school kids you're signing because they're 3 years older and they've been playing college football. And so, I mean, there's a lot of things that have changed, Ronnie. And I think Auburn right now is a better job than Auburn was 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think I don't think there's any question. I mean, you and I talked in 2013, and this place needs a facility. This place needs a facility. And you and Rodney Garner and some other coaches on staff tried to tell Gus we need a new facility. And he didn't think he needed one. And
I didn't either. I don't know when I was talking to Rodney, used to always talk about it. He'd have Jimmy Rain over there 3 times a year showing him around, trying to get him to buy us a facility. I said, I just wish they'd renovate this one. But he said, well, then we'd be sitting over there in mobile homes for about a year and a half while they renovate it. But location and logistically, I loved that building. You could go out into the weight room, into the indoor facility, never walk outside. We parked in a parking deck they had built right there. Mm-hmm. We went second level. So when you came in the building, you came in on the main floor, but it was like the 3rd floor of the parking deck. But, I mean, everything was perfect as far as logistics and location, perfect. The only thing we wanted to take that little small bubble, that building. I know it's the traditional guy donated the money. It's got his name on it. Whoops. That thing was too close to the practice fields. I mean, you about to get kids killed over there running into that thing. You could not scrimmage and throw out cuts and stuff like that over there. So really the practice fields were locked in too tight. But I'm glad they built a new one. I mean, it'd be nothing but a good improvement. But I never felt like that was a problem at all.
Well, I remember you saying it needed to be updated, I guess is what I'm.
Yeah, but to do that, so you'd have to leave the building for 18 months, and that would have been a sideshow. I do agree with that.
And that's a real issue. That's a little bit what happened to Jeff Bauer at Southern Miss. Before I got there, they were building that facility and had just moved into it, probably been into it for a year. But before that, they were living in. I mean, they were in trailers for 3 years,
right?
And not nice trailers. And it was, and the recruiting fell off.
Yeah.
But how do you see this weekend's game against Vandy? You've got an interim coach, mid-year. I mean, you look around at some of these other schools, and a lot of them have gotten a little bit of a jolt.
Well, that happens. I mean, I've been involved in 3 of those, I think, in my career. In the first week, they all come out, out swinging and emotional and all that good stuff, but it wears off. And then the reality of listening to all these names that are going to be coming in, and you don't know if the guy coaching you is coming back, and that I think that wears off pretty quick. But Vandy might be running out of gas. They may be. I mean, they had a tough one there against Texas. It wasn't as close as the score indicated. They just did a great job coming back in the 4th quarter. I think Texas got a little conservative, especially on defense, because they had them suffocated through the first half of the game. That's one of the two SEC games I could get on the TV, so I watched a lot of it. But Vandy looks like they're really kind of, it's getting to them. You know, they're not quite as deep and as talented as these teams they're playing with. It's more about their system and their level of play. They play up to their skill level every week. So I don't know. Auburn will have a shot. I mean, they got a shot every weekend, but play both quarterbacks. There's no change in results. I don't know whether it was protection the other day, but I mean, when you get 7 sacks, and they threw the ball how many times? 31?
I believe so. I don't have
31 attempts, and you got 7 sacks. And when they weren't getting sacked, they were getting pressured and moved off the spot. So I don't know, Ronnie. I don't see how it happens. Vandy's too good on offense. DJ will probably stop them better than anybody has this season. But I think Texas, one of the first times they've been held down a little bit, because they offensively, you can't get them off the field. Texas had 3 3-and-outs to start the ball game. And that's what crushed Vanderbilt. So they got to get them off the field. DJ's got to get them off the field, or they're going to win, because they're going to keep possessions and they're going to keep Auburn's offense playing from behind.
Has that changed too? Making a coaching change? I mean, you talk about, well, a kid doesn't know if his coach is going to be there. Well, in this day and age, hell, the kid may not be there.
True. I mean, that's true. I mean, that's a good point. But it's just, when you make the change before the season's over, I have never seen many of those all of a sudden just turn a team around. I've never seen that. I'm not saying I've never seen that. I've seldom seen that happen. Do they play a little bit more loose or fired up or something? They will for a while. But it all comes back down to, you got to play 60 minutes to win a game, and it just doesn't happen on emotion.
We talked about
they play at Vandy too. I just noticed that.
Vandy.
Yeah.
It's
going to be tough. I mean, I think it's going to be a hard order, frankly.
We talked about the changes in NIL, and you were at Arkansas for I remember about a month, 3 or 4 weeks anyway. There's a place like Arkansas, which has a lot of money. They've been to the championship game, which Ole Miss has not, but they haven't won anything since they were in the Southwest Conference. For a place like that to have a lot of money, I mean,
I'll go with 2 things. First of all, when they moved conferences, that's back when geographical recruiting areas were, to me, a big deal.
Yep.
And where they were getting all their good players out of Texas. I know one of the famous coaches, I think it may have been Broyles, or one of them said, when we sign a kid from Arkansas, he usually plays his junior and senior year. When we sign kids from Texas, they come in and play immediately. You have more to pick from. You have spring football down in pads. You had all kinds of things, where it was just, they could go, and they were playing half of their games in Texas, because they were in the Southwest Conference. All of a sudden, they make the move. And I can't remember who all was out there, but I know a couple of guys from NC State were recruiting, were there at the time and then later left. But their whole recruiting base, to me, got upside down. And they were no longer able to go down to Texas and as easily recruit kids. I mean, just think of the kids that played at Arkansas: Barry Switzer, Jimmy Johnson. Barry was from Arkansas, but Jimmy Johnson and I think Jerry. But all those players at Broyles had, a lot of them were Texas natives. And that really jerked it out from under. Well, now that's changed back. But see, my point again now, I don't think all that geographical stuff makes as big a deal now because of the portal. You ain't got to get all your players out of high school.
And if I'm Arkansas, look, I mean, you don't throw money around. I mean, Arkansas's got as much money as anybody. Not as much as they do.
But in the short time I was there, I didn't feel like the money was directed, was focused. It was kind of like somebody said, we got to build a new weight room facility and an indoor facility. And they finally find the person that'll give them the money. Then the next thing they do, they want to do another part of the facility or something. And they got to go to a different guy to get the money. And it's kind of like it wasn't focused and organized because, we've talked about the people that are connected to that university. I mean, the Reynolds family, the J.B. Hunt Trucking, obviously Walmart. It's just so there's some really, Jerry Jones he ain't penniless, okay? Now I know he's got a lot of things he's got his money tied up in, but he could push some weight around there anytime he wanted to and really help them. So there were plenty of sources of money, but I never felt like it was real organized and focused. It's too much fighting inside, and too, when you have a strong personality like a Broyles, you sometimes keep people all on the same page, and a lot of folks didn't like him, but you got to hand it to him when he was there. They had some control, they had some focus, and they had some oneness. And during the short time I was there, that's all I would kind of hear people talk about, because there'd been like 5 coaches in there since Broyles, and they didn't like anybody. They didn't like Hatfield. They didn't like this. They didn't like that. They didn't like Houston. They didn't like, it just something all the time. And of course, the mess that happened off the field with Bobby, and it's just always been something like that in the last 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah, it has. And it's going to be interesting to see where they go. It's going to be interesting to see where a lot of these jobs end up, because now people don't realize, or maybe they don't, maybe they need a reminder. John Cohen, well, let me back up. In this environment, with all these jobs are going to be open, 30 plus, I'm guessing. You don't have a ton of candidates that are proven. You look around and you've got John Sumrall and some guys who've done a good job at smaller schools, and you got a couple of coordinators that are hot and up and coming. Got the offensive coordinator at Oregon and the defensive coordinator at Georgia. I mean, you've got guys who can go out and that you can go out and hire. But for guys that you consider, there's not a ton of candidates. This is a guy in John Cohen who went out and hired the damn guy from Joe Moorhead and Mike Leach at Mississippi State. So this thing could end up anywhere.
Yeah. I think Leach was a great hire there. That was tragedy the way it happened. But when they gave it to Joe, he was an in-house promotion, wasn't he?
Well, didn't he come from Oregon? I think he came from Oregon or somewhere when they hired him.
Well, who moved up when Leach, when that happened?
His defensive coordinator.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it wasn't Joe. I'm sorry. Yeah. But, that's a little bit harder to hire coaches there. I think that's one of those jobs, you try to find a coordinator. You're not going to be able to get in there and throw fists with these other people hiring, if you're on that level. Of course, they're not hiring this year. But I still say, we already talked about it earlier. You got a lot of coaches right now that have national championship rings in the last 15, 20 years, and they were not head coaches when they went to where they are now. And so that they need to broaden the search. But the problem is you got so many athletic directors in it now, and if they start taking it out of the athletic director's hands, then you got some other people involved in it, and they damn sure don't know what a football coach is. But you got so many athletic directors in it now, and you almost have to have them with a business acumen, dealing with all this TV money and other things, and not many of them have a football background. So when they go to pick a football coach, they go to some of these sources of people, who keep stats and numbers and all that kind of thing, and they make bad choices. So, I think that's one of the issues. Maybe they need to get somebody. You got at least one person, 2 people in that situation that have a football background, and they can say, this guy would not be a real good fit. I'd stay away from it. Or, these 2 guys really ought to, you better give them a look. Maybe somebody they can lean on like that. I had a real good friend. He worked for me when I was a head coach at Gardner-Webb back in the 80s. And when I left, he took over as head coach, and he actually went to the national championship game. They'd lost it one year. He later on moved along, and he ended up at Duke. And he had gotten be buddies with most of those guys over there when Spurrier was there. When Spurrier and all of them went to Florida, and later on, Carl Franks, one of the assistants, came back to Duke. He hired my buddy, and he was his operations guy. Well, he would have to go over to the athletic department meetings as that role and represent Carl to find out different things, what department meetings. Well, it took him about half a year or to a year. He said, I'm the only one sitting in that meeting that knew what a football looked like. He said, we had an athletic director that Mike Krzyzewski had handpicked him. He was a former baseball coach. And you had a bunch of other guys around there, been around Duke and other places, and they were all good sports represented, which is nothing wrong with that. But he said, as a football ops guy, I was almost like a associate AD because they had to listen to me on certain matters about football. And Woody had a really great personality about him. Later became a damn fundraiser back at Gardner Webb. He could get money out of a turnip. So he just really had a great way of I guess I'd say, coaxing people and directing people to get them to do what he wanted. He changed a bunch of stuff up there about Duke football. By the time David Cutcliffe came in, they had changed some of the admissions restrictions. They had done something about some facilities and all these kind of things. And the guy who had the ear was Woody Fish. And I just think sometimes if you got a situation where these athletic directors do not have a football background, they've never played it, they've never coached it, they never were in any way involved in it, they don't understand how different it is. I mean, it's just the numbers you work with, the logistics, the simple organizational aspects. These damn baseball and basketball coaches ain't got a clue. I had a great athletic director when I was head coach at the Citadel, but he was a former basketball player and basketball coach. And he'd been athletic director at NC State. And he came back to Citadel just to get a few more years in South Carolina. He was awesome. But he'd have to ask me all the time, why do you need this? Why do you need that? And I'd say, well, Les, I'm trying to move 95 people around. It's like a small army. Equipment is a big deal in football. He ain't ever done anything but pick up the socks and the shorts and the undershirts and get them 4 pairs of shoes to get through the season. Hell, they didn't. Basketball coaches ain't got a clue what equipment is.
Well, you talked about how good your AD was at the Citadel. I'm sure he wasn't as good as the one you had at Southern Miss.
Yeah, I mean that's a good thing to bring up. I had a guy that didn't know anything about it, but knew he didn't know anything about it, and it was open-minded about it. And but he had coached. He'd coached major college basketball. Okay. And so I remember one season we started off, we had a good football team, and we started off and we were 1-3 at one point. And he followed me into the locker room after the game and grabbed me before I got to the players. And he said, listen, don't come down on them now. This is not the time. This is not, I mean, he talked to me about some things like that, and it stuck in my mind forever because he literally kept me from maybe losing those kids at that point. And we went on to won 7 that year and beat Furman, Appalachian, and Georgia Southern back to back. I would have never done it if I hadn't listened to him because they'd been playing their guts out. Hell, one of our games was at Maryland, one was at Delaware, and the other one, I can't remember who it was, and Western Carolina, who had a good team that year, but we couldn't get out of our own way. Yeah, but he was a coach. Now the other one, he played the game, but he didn't know how to pump air in a football. And he thought he did, and he would not listen. And he wouldn't listen to anybody. And it ended up the way I knew it would end up.
It was a mess. Let's get some picks in before we go.
All right.
Let's get
got my notes over here. I'll tell you one little thing. For now, at least 6 or 8 weeks in a row, they've been ranked teams playing ranked teams in the SEC. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I've said it before, it's like a circular firing squad for 4 or 5 weeks. And it's tough, man. I'm not going to say that the national champions coming out of that conference because it probably won't. But there is no way you can say that that's not the best conference in America. I mean, from a standpoint of some parity and some competitive football and the brand of football,
Yep.
It's not as dominant as it has been because kids are not hanging around playing second team anymore. They're taking the money and they're going somewhere else. So they don't have these real physical fronts with depth and everything. Like Georgia, I mean, you could take over a ball game with one group, their front, the defensive down guys, and they play 8 of them, and they just crush you, and you couldn't get anything else done on the football field. There's nobody like that in the SEC. Some of them are really good on offense, some of them are really good on defense, but they have some problems in other areas. But this is the 3rd week in a row, Ronnie. There's no ranked team played another ranked team in the Big Ten. So I know Ohio State's really good and Indiana's really good.
And Oregon's really good, but that's about it. I mean,
yeah, their conference is not, they ain't close. But anyhow, who you got here?
Let's start with Auburn and Vandy.
Well, I wish they could get back on track and win them a few before they get the season started, but you got to favor Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt.
I mean, and Clark Lee's going to be up for some jobs. You know, I mean, and some guys that you wouldn't expect are going to be up for jobs. I mean, guys that are winning 7 games at G5 jobs are going to end up getting Power 4 jobs because there's just nobody else to hire. Right. Guys that are coordinators that you would think, okay, he's 3 years away. He's going to end up getting a head coaching job because.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about Rhett Lashley, okay? Not only did I work with him, and so I know he's a really good coach. His name's been out there about all his jobs, and it said he's got an extension and all that. He got his team through that week, and they pulled a huge upset, okay? Guys like Summerall, they've been having a good season this year. All of a sudden, his name's all over the place. Distractions, and they laid an egg this weekend, and may lay another one. But sometimes that's an indicator of whether you can handle all these distractions if you really got that football team, if you got that locker room in control, you know, got them focused. But I thought that was very interesting, and you're going to see more of it, obviously, because you know, like you said, it ain't going to stop.
And I don't know if Red has signed the extension, but I'd like to remind listeners that, you know, Mike Elko was announced at Duke as having agreed to an extension too. You know, 2 or 3 days later, he was a head coach at A&M. So just because somebody's agreed to an extension, you know, or even if look, Terry Bowden agreed to an extension before the 1998 season and was gone midway through the season. Ron Zook got an extension in 2004, and we got fired midway through the season. So, you know, just because somebody's agreed to something, it doesn't mean the buyout changed. It doesn't mean anything changed other than just, you know, numbers on the end of the contract. But if the buyout number doesn't change, then you know, you can pay somebody more without changing the buyout language.
Well, they'll have good candidates. They'll have plenty to choose from. But I don't know how Auburn hires a better coach right now than Rhett. Because he knows the area, he knows the school, he knows the lay of the land, he knows who all the voices are out there that always want to talk to you. I mean, he's seen it inside and he's seen it outside. And I just think, you know, I don't know how they can find a better fit, but I'm not hiring, so let's move on.
I do think that the one thing that hurts Rhett is not his track record and the job that he's done, because he's done a great job, but the ties to Malzahn, and look, Hugh Freeze being as close to Malzahn as he was or is, and Red having worked for Red having worked for Gus, that's not going to help him. And look, and
I don't understand that. Now, what I'll also say, check Gus's record as a head coach after Brett was gone.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
If they start getting into personalities and stuff, they're going to make a bad decision.
It's going to be an interesting search. You know, Eli Drinkwitz, I would think would be among those that would get consideration. Yep. John Summerall. I mean, and a lot of these guys, look, Eli has been at Auburn. Rhett has been at Auburn. And I know both those guys are really good coaches, and they got really good staffs.
Right. I agree with that. I've never worked with Eli, but I've had my closest friend in coaching did. And he worked for him at Appalachian, and he went with him to Missouri. And the only reason he's not still with him is he just didn't like, he was getting a little close to the end of his career, and he really was unhappy to go to Missouri, but he wanted to go with Eli simply because he knew he'd be successful.
Georgia at Mississippi State. The line is Georgia by 7.5.
Yeah, Mississippi State's going to give everybody a headache, but I think Georgia beats them. I know it's a tough environment, and they're probably a little drained right now. I mean, that game they just played, it was a knockdown drag out. Score might not have looked like it, but that was a tough game against Florida. But I think they go up and get it done. There's something about Georgia. They're not nearly as good on either side of the ball as they have been in the previous 5 years. But nobody can knock them out. They just know how to win, and they don't ever, get out of control and panic and all that. So they'll end up winning. It won't be pretty, but they'll win.
And Kirby deserves, and I know he gets plenty of credit, but the way he handles that football team, he gets those guys to show up every week and play.
Yep.
We got your alma mater.
Well, if I was still playing, Ole Miss would have to get ready.
That's right.
I don't think this was going to be too hard to pick.
Let's see who else we've got. Let's get to we got Florida at Kentucky. Line is Florida by 3.5.
I really think they're going to win the football game. It won't shock me. They go up there and Stoops may get 5 turnovers off Lagway. There's no telling. Florida's playing so good on defense. If they could just be a little more productive and consistent on offense, they're better than Kentucky. But they haven't really. Huh?
Sounds a lot like Auburn, right?
Yeah, but for different reasons. I mean, I think they'll beat Kentucky.
Let's see, and we've got number 3 Texas A&M at number 19 Missouri.
Yeah, that's the only ranked versus ranked team game. I think Texas A&M wins this one. As long as Marcel Reed plays as well as he has the last 2 games, and that offensive line controls the football game. Now, Missouri has lost either 1 or 2 quarterbacks already, and I don't think they're back. So I just don't have any idea that Missouri, I don't know how they can beat somebody like Texas A&M.
And A&M's playing about as well as anybody.
Yep.
LSU, and this is the last one. Alabama's favored by 11.5 over LSU, and it's in Tuscaloosa.
And once again, you got a team with no coach. Three games have somebody with no head coach. There he got an interim, but you just don't know how those are going to shake out. And I don't think they're going to just manhandle LSU, but I just can't see a little bit of staff changes. I can't see how that fixes all their issues. And Alabama, again, they had a tough, close call against South Carolina. I think they're a little bit drained. And when they got to Columbia, they just played 4 ranked teams in a row. And South Carolina's a tough out for anybody. I mean, they got 2 or 3 kids on each side of the ball, and you better be ready to play them. So that game against South Carolina doesn't really worry me that much as far as Alabama. It proved, like I said a while ago, there are no bullies in the conference. Everybody's got problems at some spot. But I think they probably beat LSU, and it could be 2 touchdowns.
Speaking of Alabama and South Carolina, Mike Shula got fired yesterday.
Yeah.
Give your thoughts on that before we go.
Well, I don't know much about it. I mean, there's been a lot of rumbling over here about the offense. And part of the reason, Ronnie, they hyped up Sellers so much preseason, the quarterback. And, Heisman talk. And if so, the first 2 or 3 games when he doesn't play that way, everybody's looking for a scapegoat. And I do think they've had some times this year where the kid hasn't performed all that well, and he has got tremendous physical talents. But I've always said that he doesn't have NFL skills The only NFL skill he has, he's got an arm that can throw the football 110 yards. But it's just he doesn't see things well in the pocket, and he misses a lot of open receivers with accuracy. And then he doesn't have good awareness when he's in trouble, because when he does, I mean, he can get out and cause trouble. But he doesn't have quite the awareness of when he's, the pocket's closing on him, or he's got to get rid of the ball, the timing of it, and so forth. So it just hasn't worked, and I guess Mike's got to take the hit on it because he's the coordinator and the quarterback coach. But I don't know what it fixes. I'm curious what he's going to do, because they don't have another quarterback coach on the staff that I'm aware of. And I don't think they have. I mean, they can say that Sean Elliott's a coordinator, but he's never coordinated anything but a running game, and really kind of a wishbone attitude. So I'm not sure what he's going to do. He's probably got an analyst or 2 or 3 of them in there that can take it and teach the kid. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised to see major schematic differences. I don't know if it's going to help him or not. A lot of buys. Had them last week, and you got some. Texas has got a buy. Tennessee's got a buy. Oklahoma's got a buy. South Carolina, Arkansas. So a lot of teams get open.
Yeah, it should be. It should be a wild finish to the season.
Out there's a couple of really big showdowns the next weekend. You got Alabama, Oklahoma. You got Georgia and Texas. And Texas has still got A&M still got to go to Texas late in the year. Real quick before we go, this came up this morning on the podcast too, but I'm not saying Texas is out of it or Oklahoma's out of it, but I think they're probably going to have a hard time getting in that championship game. So if you got Texas A&M, Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, they're all either undefeated in the conference or just got one loss, and they're going to play those other 2 guys. So they got their own destiny in control. Texas A&M has at Missouri, no quarterback, South Carolina at home, Samford, and then they got to go to Texas. They could very easily, that could be they could play Texas, and Texas A&M could play. One of them's going to turn around and play in the championship game, and then they're going to have to turn around and start the playoffs. They're going to have like 6 games in a row that are basically playoff games.
Yeah.
Got to win every one of them. The next, Alabama, LSU, Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois, all at home. But then they got to go to Auburn. Okay, and that's all. That as soon as they walk into Jordan Hare, it's a toss-up. Georgia, you got at Mississippi State, Texas, Charlotte, at Georgia Tech. Ole Miss has got Citadel, Florida, Open Date, Mississippi State. Ole Miss, to me, has the easiest track right now.
Ole Miss got the easiest track.
Yep. Texas A&M may have the hardest, but the 2 that has to still play Texas is Georgia. Georgia gets them at home. Texas A&M's got to play them on the road. So there's some things still left out there. We haven't got out of the circular firing squad quite yet. We'll see what happens, but I think those 4 have the best chance. Texas could run the table though. And if they do, I mean, you're talking basically, you might as well say it's 9 games in a row are going to be elimination games for Texas.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about Ole Miss is a couple of different things. They've never been to the championship game, number 1.
Nope.
And number 2, all these schools, including Florida and LSU, who want to hire Lane Kiffin, he's so fickle. Even if he tells you he's coming, it doesn't mean he's coming. And so, and if you're Florida, you're LSU, are you waiting until after Ole Miss is out of the playoff?
Well, that's a good question. One thing he has done well is he still handles his team well when there's outside noise like that. Kind of like I said about Rhett. And that's hard to do because, them kids are getting double dosed with it. But they've still come to play, and they're really good and playing pretty well. The defense is not dominant, but Pete and them have been very effective when they had to be. They just better be glad that I've already graduated because, they'd had 3 tough games left.
That's exactly right.
I don't know how How about this stuff? The vaulted SEC, and these four really great teams are playing Samford, Eastern Illinois, Charlotte, and the Citadel. I mean, who came up with that? They need to go to 9 games.
Hey, look at Florida's out of conference. I mean, I think Billy Napier wishes he'd had a break. I think they had Long Island or somebody, but beyond that, they had
South Florida was a dangerous game this year. Ooh.
Well, they had outside of that was Long Island. Outside of that, they had
Florida State,
Miami, and South Florida.
All 3 of those were really good this year, or dangerous. I can't figure out what happened to Miami. I mean, they were playing so complete and so well, and then they've lost 2 out of 3.
And Clemson has imploded.
Yeah, I tell you, Ron, I can't put my finger on it, even being as close to it as I am. And of course, you know how kids are. I talk to my kid about it. He doesn't know much. And but it's just, you know, they got some kids hurt now, some critical people, receiver, quarterback, and that's all they were able to do early on was throw the football around. And then defensively, they've been decent this year, but they've had 2 different games. One was kind of early in the year, and then the other day against Duke. They can't get them off the field. I mean, they can't stop the pass, they can't stop the run, and it just looks like they don't have an answer for the other team at times. But then they'll come back next week and have a really good game on defense. So I don't know. And then they gave up a kickoff return for a 100-yard touchdown, and I don't think he ever got touched. So it's just a lot of different things. And I know that he's real organized, and they practice with great structure and all that. I mean, they go over things. They touch everything. There's nothing neglected on the practice field, but it's just for some reason it's not happening. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be. It's going to be an interesting. It's going to be an interesting off season. Well, it's going to be an interesting regular season, or finish to the regular season, I should say. You know. Do you think there's a chance Dabo leaves? I mean, you've got so much movement this year. There are going to be some big jobs that, you know, in a lot of years, he might not, you know, this might be a year he looks. I mean, if you look at
unless there's something going on over there that I'm not aware of, such as administration or, you know, some little word coming down from on high, we're going to have to cut some staff. We're spending too much. Unless some of that starts happening, I can't see him making that decision. I don't think so. I think one thing is he thinks he's got a better roster than they've performed, and that's why he's so frustrated. I don't think he sees that the program has taken a step back. It's just like they just stepped in a hole, and it's been puzzling, it's been frustrating, all that. You know, I think if he felt like it was a trend, you know, like we're getting to the point now we can't compete with the SEC and the Big Ten, and hell, we even got problems in our own conference. If he thought that was a systemic issue, he would go, I guess. But I've had some people tell me he would be entertained by professional football, and some people tell me he has zero interest in that. And you know, I could imagine, I could see Dabo getting out of coaching into the TV side of it, or into even something with FCA on a national level or something of that nature. But I mean, my gut feeling right now, unless it's coming down from inside the administration, he's lost some support, or somebody's stirring up crap on the board or something like that he gets frustrated with, I don't see it.
You know, some of these other guys are. I mean, you got to think James Franklin. I keep hearing his name at Virginia Tech. I'm not sure how much of that is smoke and how much of it's real. And then Brian Kelly will have an opportunity if he wants one, and so will James Franklin. But otherwise, you're talking about a bunch of G5 guys or G6 guys getting jobs now. It's
about time. And like I said, they don't forget the coordinators. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you know football, you can make good picks like that.
That's right.
But, you know, right now there's not a Nick Saban. And so there's not a person you go to and keep taking as assistant coaches to be head coaches. Mm-hmm. You know, if you look at Kirby and Lane and Will Muschamp, all these guys who come off his staff, you pretty much know when you've watched the way he's run programs, if they come out of his program, they've spent maybe 5 or more years with him, they're going to know what they're doing. They may not be as good a coach or something like that in some ways, but they're going to have some really structural things in place by their experiences. And there's not a lot of coaches out there now that you can say, well, if he comes off that coaching staff, he's ready to go. He's coming out of a mold where he knows exactly what to do and when to do. Hell, even Signetti worked for him a little while.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable what Saban did there. It really is.
Yep.
I mean, 7 national championships, 6 at Alabama, 1 at LSU.
I tell you, the one that amazes me is Indiana, and it's not as sustained. We don't know yet, but to do what he's done at Indiana in 2 years,
yeah,
jeez.
And I think that's what frustrates Auburn people. I mean, Hugh Freeze has spent more money than Indiana, has not just on players, on staff, on facilities, on and on and on. And I know the conference is different, but hell, I mean, you should be better than what you are.
Yep.
I think that's just, that's the bottom line. So, Ellis, good to be with you again.
Sounds good, Ronnie. Enjoyed it.